Hello, and welcome to this introduction of the Transitional Production Plan, often called the TPP. This training will walk you through how to fill out a TPP if you are in the process of transitioning your crops to be certified organic. Did you know that producers who are either transitioning to organic or who are already certified organic have access to reduced cost of crop insurance premiums through the USDA Risk Management Agency? Producers who are in their 3-year transition to organic production are eligible for premium assistance. This assistance aims to help farmers maintain their crop systems and reduce overall premium bills, especially during the transition period. To be eligible for this insurance premium assistance while transitioning to organic, you can fill out a transitional production plan and get it approved by an organic certifier. The TPP is a brief document detailing how you will manage your operation in compliance with organic regulations while in your 3-year transition period. Once the TPP is approved by an organic certifier, your operation is then added to the Organic Integrity Database under the label of Transitioning. Once that occurs, you can receive the insurance premium assistance for your transitioning crops. A transitional production plan is like a shorter organic system plan, also called an OSP. The OSP is an integral part of your application to be certified organic. You can view the transitional production plan as a practice run for your future organic system plan at the end of your transition period when you're ready to be officially certified. If you are already eligible for organic certification, meaning you haven't had any prohibited substances applied to your land in the last 3 years, it is recommended to skip the TPP, as you have no need for a transitional period and you can apply directly for organic certification instead. If you do want to complete a TPP, you can find the link to download a PDF version in the video description below. Now let's dive into the TPP. I recommend having a blank TPP in front of you while we do this walkthrough so that you can follow along section by section. You can also find a downloadable PDF of this example TPP, the one shown on the screen, also found in the description of this video. The first few pages are just for gathering information about you and your operation. We'll breeze through these pretty quickly. The first page of the TPP that requires action is the signature page. Be sure to sign it before you submit your TPP to a certifier for review. Leave the bottom section blank for the reviewer to sign and date. The next page asks for the name and address of your operation. The name of the operation should be the legal entity name. If your operation's physical, mailing, and/or billing addresses are different, be sure to list each one here. The next page asks for your name and contact information. This is important in case the reviewer needs to get in contact with you. If you'd like to, you can also add other authorized contacts who would be able to represent your operation and answer any questions the reviewer may have about the operation's management and practices. This page is all about your operation's size, layout, and history. You'll need to include a map of your operation, calling out certain details. We'll walk through a good example map together on the next slide. Begin by noting the exact physical address of the land you're going to certify and the number of acres that you're planning to certify. Next, for section 1.3, some producers may have worked with their local Natural Resource Conservation Service branch to develop a conservation plan. If you have done so, either describe the plan here or attach it to your TPP before you submit. The same goes for a government pesticide use report in section 1.4, if applicable. If you don't have a formal conservation plan or pesticide use report, then no worries. You can leave these sections blank and move right along. Section 1.5 on this page is a very important piece of the TPP. Here you must describe what prohibited substances, if any, have been applied to your land in the last 3 years. Include the name of the substances and the dates they were applied. If you are unsure whether previous applied materials were prohibited or not, you can check the National Organic Program's list of allowed and prohibited substances. The 3-year transitional period begins from the date of the last applied prohibited substance. If you have just bought the land and have no knowledge of the previous substance applications, try to get in contact with the previous owner or previous land manager to find out. If you are unable to get in contact with them or determine the substance application history of the land, then you should note that here. Your 3-year transition period will begin from the date you took over management of the land. You must include a map of your operation with your TPP. Here's a good example of one. In your map, you should include the cardinal directions to orient the viewer and an outline of the entire property. You should also call out which land you plan to certify, the types of crops grown in different areas, what features or operations surround your land, and any buffer zones that you will implement to prevent crop contamination. In this map, the neighbor to the west grows alfalfa conventionally, using sprayed substances that are prohibited for organic use. The yellow areas on the map indicate the buffer zones that will prevent spray residue from making its way onto the transitioning crops. On the next page of the TPP, you are asked to list all your crops. Note that this includes grass and pasture for grazing livestock. You will also describe any risks of contamination from pesticide drift or runoff from neighboring parcels. You should try to be as specific as you can here. Do you know the substances the neighbors spray? What about the prevailing wind directions? Try to be as clear as you can about the likelihood of drift of prohibited materials. Then, describe what you'll do to mitigate that risk. Maybe you can speak with your neighbors about spraying on non-windy days. You could implement buffer zones on your property between you and your neighbor. Plant a hedgerow to help intercept any drift. You can be creative here and implement solutions that work best for your land. But the primary goal is always preventing contamination of your crops and soil. This page discusses what seeds, seedlings, and/or planting stock you use. During your transition, you can continue to use non-organic seeds, seedlings, and stock if needed. However, you should not use any genetically modified seeds or seedlings during your transition, and you should be very careful about any treatments or coatings on those seeds or in potting soil. If you plant seeds that are treated or coated with a prohibited substance, that can potentially count as a widespread application of a prohibited substance and therefore reset your 3-year transition clock. The next page asks about record keeping. Record keeping can seem daunting to producers who have historically not documented farm practices or production. It's a very good idea to use your 3-year transitional period to nail down the record-keeping system that works best for you and your operation. The National Organic Program requires record keeping, but does not require a specific format for those records. Whether you prefer digital or paper records, or a mix of both, you can develop the record-keeping system that is easiest for you to maintain. On this page of the TPP, note the records that you already keep and the ones you plan to keep during your transition. Once you are certified, you will need to document seeds and seedlings, planting information, input applications, harvest records, and sales records. Record keeping is required for organic certification to ensure transparency and traceability within an operation. A good record keeping system makes up the backbone of a certified organic operation. On this page of the TPP, you will list all of the inputs you currently use and will use on your operation during your transitional period. Input materials is a very broad term that includes any material you use for agricultural production. This includes obvious things like soil amendments or potting mixes, but it also includes less obvious items like sanitizers in your wash and pack station or silage tarps for weed suppression. Be very detailed in this section, as the reviewer can help you determine what materials are allowed or prohibited. You can also check the national list, the Organic Materials Review Institute, also called OMRI, or the Washington State Department of Ag list of approved materials to find out which are allowed for organic production. The following pages of the TPP must be filled out to show that you have a plan to meet the organic regulations surrounding natural resources and biodiversity, soil fertility, pest and disease management, contamination prevention, and post-harvest crop handling. Organic operations must maintain or improve natural resources and biodiversity on their certified land. Transitioning producers must show that they are developing a plan to do so once certified. This section can feel a bit redundant, as one action you take, such as reducing tillage, can apply to many different sections of this requirement. A critical piece of organic certification is the maintenance, improvement, and sustainability of the land you produce on. Be creative and honest about how you plan to meet these regulations. There are no right or wrong answers. This section just gives you an opportunity to think on different ways that you can foster the cycling of natural resources on your operation. On this page, describe your soil fertility management practices and your water quality management practices. For number 1, dealing with soil management, consider ways that you can reduce bare, exposed soil, keep living roots in the ground via cover cropping, or limit tillage. Annual soil tests are another great way to keep an eye on pH levels and organic material levels in your soil. For number 2, dealing with water management, consider ways that you can conserve water, like with certain types of irrigation, and prevent runoff into waterways to protect local water supplies. This next page is a continuation of the Natural Resources and Biodiversity section. For number 3, describe how you will maintain or improve wildlife on your land. This can look like limiting tillage for soil-dwelling creatures, planting hedgerows or flower zones to provide increased habitats, repelling rather than destroying unintended species, and maintaining habitats that may already exist, such as trees and meadows. Number 4 asks about native species. Does your operation prioritize the conservation of native species? Do you plant native wildflowers or choose to leave, rather than weed, native volunteer plants on the perimeters of your land? Do you allow meadows to sit undisturbed or protect natural waterways on your property? Think on how you can use your land to support and foster the species that are native to your region. Number 5 asks about non-native or invasive species. What are the most common invasive species that you deal with on your land? How will you prevent the encroachment of these species? Do you utilize cover crops to dampen weed pressure, or do you weed regularly? As you transition, develop plans to mitigate invasive species on your operation. Number 6 asks about crop diversity. Do you grow a variety of crops and rotate crops? Do you interplant? And do you choose species that are adapted for your region? The next section of the TPP is focused purely on soil. Number 1 asks how you will protect soil and minimize erosion. Consider adjusting your tilling practices, implementing cover crops, or interplanting. Number 2 asks about crop nutrients and soil fertility. Do you rotate crops or implement compost or manure? Again, these answers can feel a bit redundant, but it is convenient that implementing certain impactful solutions can meet multiple different requirements for conservation and resource management. Number 3 on this page is just a checkbox asking about your intended uses of compost, manure, and micronutrients. There are certain rules in the organic regulations regarding the application of raw manure to crops meant for human consumption. Put simply, for crops with edible portions not touching the ground, raw manure can only be applied at least 90 days or more before harvest. For crops with edible portions touching the ground, raw manure can only be applied at least 120 days or more before harvest. Compost containing manure must be composted to certain parameters, so read up on the organic regulations to understand those requirements fully. The next page covers crop rotation. Note that crop rotation is required for organic certification. You must demonstrate in the TPP that you are developing a plan to implement crop rotation before you get certified, if you do not already rotate crops. For perennial operations, you can be creative with crop rotation. Consider intercropping, such as planting native grasses in alleys, or planting fallow areas with native plants and flowers to increase biodiversity. The next section of the TPP covers pest, weed, and disease management on your operation. For number 1, you should describe your prevention plans. The National Organic Program encourages prevention as a first line of defense against weeds and pests. Crop rotation is both a requirement for certification and an effective way to interrupt life cycles of weeds, pests, and diseases. Sanitizing tools between uses is another way to prevent spreads of disease among crops. Mulching is a good example of weed suppression that also adds organic material to the soil over time. You could also build up habitat for beneficial wildlife that prey on common pests in your region. For number 2, specifically describe how you'll address pests. You could implement raptor perches, owl boxes, or bat boxes, which would also meet requirements for improving wildlife habitat and biodiversity. You can plan on frequent crop rotations to break pest life cycles, or intercrop with plants that repel pests, like fragrant herbs or flowers. You can also select varieties to grow that are resistant to the types of pests you see regularly. There are a number of ways that different operations can address pest problems in compliance with the organic regulations. Number 3 of this section asks specifically about weeds. Do you mulch, graze livestock, or weed? And if you do weed, is it by hand or mechanically? Number 4 asks about diseases. Some operations face consistent disease pressure, while others don't. Good rules of thumb for minimizing the spread of disease include regular cleaning and sanitation of tools, crop rotation, proper spacing and pruning of crops, and selecting disease-resistant varieties. Finally, number 5 in this section is just a checkbox asking about substances you may use to control diseases. This includes both natural substances, which are typically allowed for organic production, or synthetic substances that have been specifically approved for use in organic production. Again, refer to the national list of allowed and prohibited substances to read up on which materials are approved for organic use. Be sure to list any of these materials in your input materials list earlier in your TPP. The next section covers preventing contamination and commingling. Contamination is when non-approved materials come in contact with certified organic crops. Commingling is when certified organic crops are mixed with non-organic crops that are visually indistinguishable. If you plan on running a split or parallel operation, meaning you'll be growing both certified organic crops and conventional crops on the same land, you should be very detailed in this section about how you will prevent contamination and commingling from occurring. Number 1 asks specifically how you plan to prevent contamination or commingling. If any equipment is shared between organic and non-organic production, you should thoroughly clean that equipment between each use. If running an operation that produces both organic and non-organic crops, you should consider having 2 different wash stations and/or 2 different colors of harvest and storage totes to easily distinguish between organic and non-organic goods. The rest of this page is a series of checkboxes asking questions about your operation, such as whether you have treated lumber, where you store non-approved materials, and if you ever transport crops. None of these checkboxes require written answers, but if you do check any of these boxes, you should be considering how to prevent contamination or commingling from occurring in relation to that topic. The last page of the TPP covers post-harvest handling. In the world of organic certification, handling is a very broad term. It can include washing, processing, cooking, drying, freezing, packaging, and more. The question on this page is a simple checkbox asking if you do any post-harvest handling of crops that you intend to get certified. If you do, you may eventually need to get handling certification in addition to your crop certification. Note that simple on-site processing, such as rinsing vegetables and putting them into bags for sale at a market, would typically not require a handling certification. However, if you are cooking crops or creating value-added products from your crops, such as salsa or jam, you would need a handling certification. No matter how complex or simple your post-harvest handling processes are, they should be well documented by the time you apply for organic certification. Thank you for watching this training on how to fill out a transitional production plan for crops. If you have any questions about the TPP, reach out to your intended certifier or your region's Transition to Organic Partnership Program representatives.